Today we're speaking with Chris Berry, founder of House Mountain Partners, LLC.
Vibrant populations that are growing. And so, that to us paints a rosy picture for commodity demand going forward.
Chris is a veteran of 15 years on Wall Street with a specialization on international finance. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for coming on Kidela.com.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here.
I understand that in the past 6 months, you traveled a fair bit. Can you tell us where you've been?
Sure. I've practically been all over the world. I've been in China, I've been in Australia, been in Canada multiple times, and Europe and the Western United States, and doing a couple of different things, specifically making a lot of presentations to institutional and also individual investors talking about, the macroeconomic picture and how we see the commodity boom that we're currently in playing out going forward.
Well, this travel and the conversations you've had during these trips must have given you an interesting perspective on what's taking place.
Yeah, it absolutely has. I mean, you have an opportunity to really talk to people all over the world with different backgrounds and different sort of hopes and dreams and fears. And probably the most interesting place that I've been in the last 12 months is China. I was in Shenzhen at a natural resource conference making a couple of different presentations, actually. And what really sort of astounded me wasn't really what you read about in the newspapers with respect to infrastructure and so on and so forth, but really just the thirst for knowledge over there and the thirst for knowledge about commodities and resources and where we go from here. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. I made two separate 30-minute presentations. One, I talked about vanadium and sort of the way forward for that minor metal. And another one was how to evaluate junior metal and mining companies. And the presentations themselves were a half an hour each. They were simultaneously translated, and I was surrounded by people with more questions and for at least another 45 minutes to an hour after each presentation. So that tells me that this commodity boom that we're looking at, or we're in, I should say now, has legs, and it has legs because you've got billions of people, not just in China, but in other countries throughout the world that want a higher quality of life, and a higher quality of life is predicated on commodity demand and also knowledge about the commodity markets.
So let's ask you an easy question. When you talk about the commodity boom, what's happening in the resource sector?
Well, I think that uncertainty is the rule of the day, and the uncertainty surrounds a couple of different factors. Number one, what the future of the Eurozone looks like, whether or not that will remain a viable entity going forward. You'll see countries like Greece and Spain and Portugal be kicked out, and also economic growth in China. I mean, that Chinese growth has been the bellwether or the driver, the linchpin, if you will, of commodity demand over the last, say, 10 to 20 years, and it looks like China is now slowing down. So there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding those two factors, and I think that's really what's pushing the markets down. There's what's known as a risk-off mentality right now as opposed to risk-on. So, we look at the TSX Venture Exchange as a real proxy for commodity demand because so many of the companies that are listed on that exchange are focused on either exploration or production, and year to date, that index is down 12%. And it's actually down 50% since March 2011. So that tells me that investors are really nervous about commodity demand going forward.
The investors are nervous, but we recently wrote an article about the rapid growth of middle class in emerging nations. How is the pressure to build an infrastructure to support this growth affecting mineral prices?
Well, Rob, that's a great question, and that's a bigger picture issue, and a lot of the research that we write focuses on the bigger pictures. That you reference. Commodity demand is really, we think, going forward underpinned by demographics. And so what you're seeing is what we commonly refer to as the emerging world. So that's China, India, Indonesia, countries like Colombia that have young populations, vibrant populations that are growing. And so, that to us paints a rosy picture for commodity demand going forward. We're not going to say that it's a linear movement from lower left to upper right, but generally speaking, the genie is out of the bottle. And so what you're looking at is, we think, steady but perhaps rocky commodity demand going out into the future because of the demographic shifts that are taking place throughout the world. A lot of what we've been talking about lately is this idea that no society, no middle class has been able to sustain itself and grow without access to reliable and affordable electricity. So we've spent a lot of time lately focusing on what I call energy metals. So those metals like lithium, graphite, rare earths, vanadium, that all play a role today and especially going forward in sustaining that quality of life, not just for us here in the Western world, but also in the emerging world as well.